Have you ever wondered why some people seem to escape their wrongdoings for years, only to lose everything in a single moment? Why life sometimes stays silent while dishonesty grows, and then suddenly strikes back when least expected? The truth is, every action we take leaves a mark. Every lie, every act of greed, every moment of kindness, life remembers it all. Even when nobody is watching, the universe is quietly keeping score. And one day, somehow, the consequences always return. Welcome back to Lessons for Life Tales, where every story carries a lesson powerful enough to change the way you see the world. Today's story is not just about a dishonest shopkeeper and a poor farmer from a small Indian village. It is about karma, justice, and the dangerous illusion that clever people can cheat life forever. What began as a simple daily exchange slowly turned into a shocking revelation that left an entire village speechless. And trust me, the ending of this story may make you rethink your own actions in ways you never expected. So stay with me until the very end, because sometimes the smallest dishonest act can destroy an entire life. In the heart of a quiet Indian village, surrounded by dusty roads, swaying trees, and endless fields of farmland, stood a small shop that everyone depended on. It was not a grand place. The wooden shelves were old, the walls slightly faded from years of heat and monsoon rain. But to the villagers, that little store was a symbol of trust. The owner was a man named Govind. Every morning, he opened the shop before sunrise, dressed neatly in a clean white kurta, greeting customers with warm smiles and polite words. Mothers sent their children there without hesitation. Farmers stopped by after long days in the fields. Elderly villagers often sat outside his shop, sharing tea and conversation. For 3 generations, Govind's family had served the village, and because of that history, people believed honesty lived within those walls. But sometimes, appearances can hide uncomfortable truths. Behind Govind's friendly smile was something the villagers could not see. A quiet greed growing deeper with every passing year. It did not reveal itself loudly at first. It hid in tiny moments, small shortcuts, and little dishonest choices nobody noticed. And that is the dangerous thing about deception. It rarely arrives like a storm. It slips into a person's heart silently, until one day, the damage can no longer stay hidden. On the far edge of the village, where the roads became rough and the houses grew smaller, lived a humble farmer named Ramu. He was not wealthy, powerful, or educated. His world was simple: a tiny piece of land, 2 buffaloes, and a small home he shared with his wife, Kamla. But despite their struggles, there was honesty in that home that money could never buy. Every morning before sunrise, while most of the village was still asleep, Kamla carefully prepared fresh butter by hand. She worked patiently for hours, turning milk into rich golden butter known throughout the village for its purity and taste. Then Ramu would wrap the clay pot in a damp cloth, place it carefully on his old bicycle, and ride nearly 3 kilometers to Govind's shop. Their arrangement never changed. 1 kilogram of butter in exchange for 1 kilogram of wheat. No contracts. No arguments. No suspicion. Just routine and trust repeated day after day for 5 long years. Ramu never questioned the measurements Govind gave him, because honest people rarely expect dishonesty from others. But while Ramu continued living with quiet integrity, something darker was slowly growing inside Govind. Every small dishonest shortcut he took fed his greed a little more. And without realizing it, the simple exchange between these 2 men was quietly moving toward a moment that would change both of their lives forever. But greed has a dangerous way of changing a person slowly, almost invisible. What begins as a small dishonest thought eventually poisons the mind. And over the years, Govind's greed had quietly grown into suspicion. One scorching summer morning, as the heat settled heavily over the village, Govind stood alone inside his shop watching Ramu ride away after delivering the usual pot of butter. But this time, something dark stirred inside him. What if he's been cheating me? Govind whispered to himself. What if that poor farmer has been stealing from me all these years? The thought refused to leave his mind. The more he entertained it, the more convinced he became. His own dishonesty had made him believe everyone else must be dishonest too. For the first time in 5 years, Govind decided to check the butter himself. After making sure no one was watching, he locked the shop door, placed the clay pot carefully onto his weighing scale, and stared intensely as the balance settled. Then, suddenly, his eyes widened in shock. The butter weighed only 900 grams. For a moment, silence filled the shop. Then, rage exploded inside him like fire. His face turned red with fury as he slammed his fist onto the counter. "That thief!" he shouted. "That liar has been robbing me this entire time!" Blinded by anger and humiliation, Govind stormed out of the shop, determined to expose Ramu before the entire village, never realizing that the truth waiting ahead would soon destroy everything he thought he knew. By late afternoon, nearly the entire village had gathered beneath the enormous banyan tree, where disputes were settled and justice was spoken. Men stood whispering among themselves, while women watched silently from a distance. Children climbed low branches, trying to catch a glimpse of the unfolding drama. At the center of it all stood Govind, furious and humiliated, pointing aggressively toward Ramu as if he were a criminal. "For 5 years this man has been cheating me," Govind shouted loudly for everyone to hear. "Every day he brought me less butter while pretending to be honest." The crowd gasped in disbelief. Ramu, however, stood quietly, with his head slightly lowered, his face calm despite the public shame being thrown at him. The village elder slowly raised his hand for silence, before speaking in a firm voice. "Ramu," he said, "the shopkeeper claims your butter weighs less than 1 kilogram. What do you have to say for yourself?" For a moment, the entire village fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop moving through the trees. Then Ramu finally lifted his eyes and spoke softly. "Sir, I am only a poor farmer. I do not own a weighing scale." Murmurs spread through the crowd as Govind smirked proudly, convinced victory was already his. But then Ramu continued, "Every day, I buy 1 kilogram of wheat from Govind's shop. At home, I place that wheat on one side of my balance and cut butter until both sides weigh the same." The elder leaned forward slowly, his expression changing. "So," he asked carefully, "if the butter weighs only 900 grams, then the wheat you receive must also have weighed 900 grams. Ramu nodded quietly, and in that instant, the truth struck the entire village like thunder. Govind had unknowingly exposed his own deception. The man who accused another of cheating had been cheating everyone himself all along. A heavy silence fell over the village. Moments earlier, the crowd had looked at Ramu with suspicion. Now every eye slowly turned toward Govind. The proud shopkeeper who once stood shouting with confidence could no longer lift his head. His face drained of color as the truth closed around him like a trap of his own making. The villagers whispered in shock, finally realizing that for years Govind had been stealing from the very people who trusted him most. Not through grand crimes or violence, but through tiny acts of dishonesty repeated day after day. The village elder rose slowly to his feet, his expression stern and deeply disappointed. "Govind," he said, his voice echoing beneath the great tree, "you dug a pit for another man and have fallen into it yourself. Your greed blinded you so completely that you never realized you were measuring your own dishonesty every single day." Govind remained silent, staring helplessly at the ground. He had accused an innocent man, only to expose the corruption inside his own heart. The elder then announced the punishment before the entire village. Govind would repay Ramu for every stolen gram of wheat from the past 5 years, and he would no longer be allowed to remain in the village. Gasps spread through the crowd as Govind stood frozen in shame. In the end, it was not Ramu who destroyed him. It was his own greed, his own lies, and the belief that he could cheat others forever without consequence. Karma had simply returned what he himself had given to the world. Stories like this stay with us because deep down, we recognize ourselves inside them. Maybe not as a dishonest shopkeeper standing in front of a village, but in the small choices we make every day when nobody is watching. That is how dishonesty often begins, not with huge crimes, but with tiny compromises. A small lie, a shortcut, a selfish decision we convince ourselves does not really matter. But over time, those small actions accumulate quietly, shaping our character and eventually shaping our future. Govind believed a few missing grams of wheat were insignificant. Yet those tiny dishonest acts slowly poisoned his integrity, until greed completely controlled his thinking. And in the end, the very deception he used against others became the reason for his downfall. That is the frightening truth about life. We are all measured by the standards we create for other people. Trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. Respect takes years to earn, but only moments to lose. Karma is not always immediate, but life has a mysterious way of restoring balance sooner or later. Sometimes through consequences, sometimes through regret, and sometimes through the painful realization that we became the very thing we once judged in others. So this story is not only about Govind and Ramu, it is about every one of us. It asks a simple but uncomfortable question. What kind of future are our actions creating today? In the end, life has a way of returning to us exactly what we give to others. Honest actions may seem small and unnoticed in the moment, but over time they build trust, peace, and respect that no amount of money can replace. And dishonesty, no matter how clever or hidden it appears, eventually carries a price. That is the lesson hidden inside this simple village story. So, as you move forward in your own life, remember this. The choices you make today are quietly shaping the future, waiting for you tomorrow. Choose kindness when you can. Choose honesty even when nobody is watching. Because in the end, our character becomes our true legacy. Thank you so much for spending these moments with us here on Lessons for Life Tales. If this story touched your heart or made you reflect on your own life, let us know in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment where life returned to you exactly what you gave to someone else? We would truly love to hear your story. And if you enjoy meaningful stories with powerful life lessons, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Lessons for Life Tales so you never miss another inspiring journey. Until next time, may your life be filled with wisdom, peace, kindness, and good health.